Good morning and welcome to the second symposium on a futuristic look through ancient lenses. And we have been enriched last year to have the lenses of the ancient Egyptians. No bias here. I mean, I was not born at that time. But this year we moved in a natural succession to the second ancient civilization that really affected the world. And I was just telling the Consul General a minute ago that not only they give us, the ancient Greeks, not only gave us their thoughts, but they gave us the way of thinking as well. So in other words, they didn't give us the way to fish and get more fish as we go. 2,000 years ago, the Apostle Paul went to Athens and he gave a testimony for ancient Greeks of that time. He said, "You are very religious." In one of his apostles, one of his messages to one of the churches, he said that the Greeks seek wisdom, seek wisdom. And I think wisdom is the most wonderful attribute that you can give to a human being. And we are thankful to all the experiences that are documented for us from ancient Greece. And without much ado, we have a real Greek person. I'm not sure how many of you have Greek DNA in them, but here a real one. She told me, "Call me Ioanna." And here she is, Consul General of Chicago.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you again for the warm welcome. That was already obvious since last evening. So we have now a bet here, how not to repeat myself between last evening and this morning. This is working. I don't need it, perfect. I have just this. He gave it to me. I follow the steps of the organizers. See, even better.
That's technology.
Yes, that's technology. So that's what we were saying. So going back to what he just said, and that's somehow to link it with what was discussed yesterday, I made a case that actually what ancient Greece and its peak point, which is classical Athens, where everything came together in one city and in the peak of progress, gave to us was not just exploring science or arts or the truth and the knowledge, but as well as questioning and trying to establish the way we acquire knowledge. How do we reach awareness? And that was the most important gain, along with the huge concentration of great minds in one city in a short, it's short, 2 centuries, less than 2 centuries is a really short period of time in human history. And then actually, Vafik said, they didn't give us really the fish, they give us the nets, I think, or the method you meant. And I should add, they gave you the fish and the nets, so it was a good gift. And so the subject that my good friend Dr. Wabi suggested was the huge one, like I said, so how Greece and ancient Greece is connected to the quest of truth, meaning, knowledge, and wisdom, how it affected the subsequent civilizations, and actually I added a little bit, how do we look upon this from where we stand now on the 21st century and what's currently going on in the world. Yesterday we tried and we said that it's important to know the definitions, how we move and what we mean. And we kind of established that actually Greece, ancient Greece and the ancient Greek civilization was actually focused on truth in all the ways, truth in the sense and the way you acquire it, and in a way that is completely harmonious. So they reach this level of truth and beauty being the 2 faces of the same coin. And I was just mentioning, and there is a reason I repeat myself on that we can find these ideas in literature or in thinkers afterwards. And so I made a reference to a poem by John Keats where he said that truth is beauty and beauty is truth. And that's something to remember for ancient Greece because it's part of actually the attraction it exercises on everybody. It's not just the knowledge. Actually, today we have much deeper knowledge and broader knowledge on everything. We have more information and achievements that we can follow. But it was the combination with beauty, and this was not on the artistic sense, like I'm looking at a sculpture or a painting or a building, but it was also in the way it was interacting with the landscape. So human and natural environment were in harmony, and they were actually interacting in the intellectual production and the artistic production. Going now to how this affected subsequent civilizations, I would say, again, one can make an easy statement, especially being a Greek diplomat. That's a very good statement. Look around you. We are all over. And it is a true statement, but we need to support it and prove it. And I would say it's easy. Everybody can find references in arts, that is literature or sculpture or anything you can name, to see influence of the classical Greek civilization there, be it in the technique or in the themes they use. And since we are in the States, I can just tell you, go to Washington, D.C., go to the nation's capital and look at the government buildings. And you will see the architecture there, and you will clearly see the influence of the rhythm of classical Athens. And go and read literature throughout the centuries. You will see that. But you listened to your first presidential debate last night, and the dialogue, the exchange of arguments to win a case is something that actually was born in Athens, in classical Athens. Of course, it has been developed ever since, changed, covering broader or different areas. But the matrix was there, and that's the important thing. And what is even more important, and it leads us to 21st century, is also the political system. The political system we are actually proud of, democracy, was actually based in classical Athens. That's where people were gathering, they were exchanging views, they were co-deciding, they were casting votes. The parliaments we have, they come from that system. Before that, city-states were ruled in different ways. But in Athens, they developed the dialogue, the debate, as a means of reaching a consensus and decisions. Plus, they were electing their leaders. So the leaders would assume the office, and then they would step down. Sometimes they would even be ostracized, exiled, kicked out, if the people were not satisfied by their work. And going back to heroes of movies, the word is even Greek, democracy. So, and like I say, as if you dig all over Greece, you will find something from the past, a relic. The same goes with language, terminology in different languages. If you go to medicine, if you go to maths, if you go to political sciences, you will find Greek words on keywords, on key notions, and that's the important thing, to see the foundation. And since we were talking about US and current political systems, and I'm a diplomat, actually it would be only becoming for me to tell you that one of the key books that it's taught in the US as well for international relations and political science is the history of Thucydides, the history of the Peloponnesian Wars. Because it's not just the narration, it's not just the history, it's the foundation of international relations and actually of the study of power among states. And not only that, in this work, we also have the funeral oration of Pericles. That's all we know of Pericles in a way. It's through the lenses of Thucydides. Again, not the primary sources, but sources we rely upon. And I invite you to go and read. There are wonderful English translations of this work. And if you go through this speech, if you didn't know that that was written in classical Athens, you would think it's a leader of today, actually, making a speech for his powerful state, for, in a way, the State of the Union in front of the first fallen in a war. And you will see how well he describes the function of the state. This function of the state is actually the way democracy was functioning in Athens at its peak. There you can find all the elements of democratic systems that we're proud of and we defend so much. And you will also see a country with, because it was a country, city-state, but it was a big country. A country with a global vision, to the extent that globe was conceived, of course, back then, when its interests were all over and where the main issues we are faced with today were there already. They were discussed and they were faced in a way. So it's like, you know, I won't go as far and say everything was discovered back then, because this is an easy statement. I mean, if we talk about literature, we can say, what is literature in subject? It's love and death. There is no other issue in literature. So what's new is the way you approach it, the shades you discover, the interconnections you make. Otherwise, those are the two issues all literature has dealt with through the centuries. So we don't simplify. I'm just saying that at that point, at that corner of the world, a system had been set. And that's what really influenced other civilization. Because elements, pieces, achievements, some wonderful achievements sometimes, come from all civilizations. We should never ignore the contribution of everything. Nothing comes out of nothing. We step on what the people before us did. So even the ancient Greek civilization was not born out of nothing, of course. It inherited elements from all other civilizations. And it took in elements from other civilizations it met through its history. But what was a real achievement, and that's why we admire it so much, was that it put everything into a system, into a fully functioning system in all aspects, in the organization of the state, in the arts, in the science, and the thought. And the thing is that even if we go now into our sciences, we will step on the same tools. We have developed those tools, of course, because the important thing, and there we are completely on the same line, it's not the amount of information, because every day you acquire more information. It's the method to gain the information. And what is important for the human mind is to have the method. We had the discussion this morning. What does a university do? We're in a university here. You cannot teach people everything. There is no such thing as everything. But what you need to teach them is the way for them to learn. So people who really have a good education can learn everything on their own after they leave university. They have the tools to move. They know what to do. And going now to the most, I think, important issue is how we approach from 21st century ancient Greece and the civilization and why it is relevant. Because if it is just to admire the past, people might say that's a good thing, but maybe it's not so relevant today. We're faced with problems. Okay, they gave us the system, but now we have developed the system, so okay, why are we discussing that? If we go back to what we were discussing, that ancient Greece set the foundation for people to understand how they learn and put into the center the whole ancient Greek civilization, had in the center the human, the individual, and the way the individual reaches excellence, be it in science, be it in arts, be it in the personal development within the city-state. That automatically means that the center is in what you are. Not exactly how much you make. That's a good statement to make. And in Europe, this still is the case sometimes, but we tend to forget it in the 21st century. And maybe in the middle of challenges we face now, it's important to remember those things. Why does anybody in this room remembers Athens and ancient Greece? The classical Athens we're talking about on that era was a superpower, at some point the only power. And it had colonies all over the then known world, rich, imposing. If you go back to the Peloponnesian Wars, the history, you will see some exchange of statements with less powerful countries that are so cynical, because excellence doesn't mean necessarily good, mild, soft. It means also powerful. So you will see cynicism like, you will surrender because we are most powerful, so you have no choice. So things that today we would be reluctant to state so openly. But, I mean, what remains today to everybody's mind when we talk about ancient Greece is not this superpower all over the Mediterranean and the then known world. It's not the conquests, because at some point there were huge conquests. It's not even the failures. You know, yesterday as I was entering at the library, I saw, you know, a list with all the wars in ancient Greece. They are more than you can count. So that doesn't mean that you had this wonderful, peaceful paradise landscape. No, you had human beings, and that's the marvel of it. Real human beings with failures, with passions, with everything, who were concentrating, though, in thinking and understanding. And that's how we picture this era. The picture we get from that era is this. It's the Parthenon. That's probably Pericles' best achievement in the city. It's the marbles. It's the literature. It's Thucydides. It's the tragedy. It's the comedy. It's the rhetoric. Those are the things we all keep and remember. It's the harmony. That means that actually the choice that ancient Greek civilization made to promote what the individual is and the excellence of its individual was really a wise choice, was a right choice, because it lives with us 1,000 years afterwards. And this is the real inheritance. Coming now to our current world, we might say that although we know, we study, we admire, we repeat the themes, sometimes, because now, of course, we live on a completely different scale. You have to imagine the then known world was the Mediterranean world. Now the world is the whole globe and beyond sometimes with things we do. And now information runs to us with a speed we cannot even absorb sometimes. We know what is happening at any place of the world thanks to internet, and we can't imagine our lives otherwise. So sometimes we tend to forget that, of course, power and things you acquire are definitely important. Power has always been important in this world. But what should prevail if a society needs to set priorities for the individuals, and that's for the whole society, is what you are. And I think that's an important statement to make also in an educational establishment like the university. It would be a good thing if people would give priority to the basics, which is what I am, what's my value. Because at the end of the day, it's a safer bet. This is something to stay with you. Anything else could come and go, could stay, but you have no total control over it. And, you know, the permanent values are always a safer investment, a safer choice for people. And I would say that if we go along this path, we might find better or rediscover ways to go over problems that seem to be totally unsolvable at this point. And another point I would like to make is this, that links to what I just said. All civilizations, ever since ancient Greece, going from the Romans, that actually conquered us, had have been in a constant dialogue with ancient Greece, one way or the other, taking the same themes and treating them in a different way in their literature. In philosophy, taking the same path, questioning the same path, entering into debate, trying to prove whether it's right or wrong, taking philosophy into the mechanics or the technology to see if it works, studying the architecture and trying to find how it was working with the light, the sun, and the air. And I wouldn't go as far as to say that ever since we fine-tune our knowledge, but I would say that we have a constant there. We have a constant, we build around it, upon it, or even against it, but it is a constant. And since we were saying that actually in ancient Greece, the civilization had reached the point where truth and beauty were actually equal. They were almost the same. You couldn't have one without the other. I would say that this makes me think that another poet, in a way, questioned that, since we are in the realm of poetry. So we said, Keats said, yes, beauty is truth. And then T.S. Eliot wrote that humankind cannot bear very much reality. And maybe that's also a price to pay once you reach that point. But then again, to see how ancient Greece survives in our time, we go on this poem. It's one of the, I think, the 4 quartets where he mentions that. And then he says, after that statement that humankind cannot bear very much reality, the time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future, and time future contained in time past. That's something that it's always good to keep in mind while wondering about ancient civilizations, how relevant they are, how present they are. And to conclude my remarks, I would tell you that since we said that ancient Greece was all about awareness, thinking, logic, and going back to the roots of the words, the word logic derives from the Greek word for reason, which is logos, but it's a funny word because the Greek word logos, that stands for reason, stands also for talk, stands also for work, for word, for logical sequence, and so on. Because it was the root, the inference, the logic, the maths were at the root of the quest. At the root of the quest for truth, for beauty, and for a system that makes sense out of all it. Thank you.
Well, that's your time now for questions and her time for answers. You have the Q, she have the A.
Yeah, we can do it the other way around if you want to.
No, it's not a voice for me.
While you were talking, I was thinking about education here in the United States and how we teach history and look at historical perspectives. In Greece, how is that subject addressed in the schools? And how much sense do you get that the students, the current students in elementary and high school, appreciate the historical? Do they see it as we see it, or do they see it at a deeper level or a shallower level because they're part of it?
That's the thing, yeah. You almost gave the answer. Of course, I have to say I'm not an expert in education, so the best memories I can have are the ones when I was a student. So they're not very up to date. But what I would tell you is this. I'll give the not smart answer, it depends, but it's the only truthful answer. The difference with us Greeks is once you are born in an environment in the same nation that comes all these 1,000 years, and you're surrounded by all this. I was saying, I mean, people who are born in Athens, but not even only in Athens, they don't have a first impression of this. So in a way, yes, they love it. Do they admire it the way a person sees it for the first time when this person is 16? I don't know. I cannot tell. I cannot tell the difference. So in a way, it's part of you. The past is part of you. So that changes the way you talk about history or the way you see history, because time has a different notion. I was mentioning again last night, I was stationed in my career in Ljubljana, Slovenia, one of the new states from former Yugoslavia. I was there at the end of the 90s. It was a pretty young state back then, a little less than 10 years old. And we had our national day for the War of Independence, which was started in Greece in 1821 against the Ottoman Empire that gave birth to the modern Greek state. So this young, lovely journalist comes to me during the reception. So can you tell me a few words about, the occasion of the Greek National Day, blah, blah. I said, yes. So I said, what are you celebrating? I stayed and said, when did this happen? I told her, oh, that was pretty recent. That was 1821. I said to me, that far back? And I said, of course, I was shocked because that was a nation that was counting 9 years of independence. Of course, it makes total sense. And to me, 1821, of course, it's very recent. So if that gives you an example, yeah, people have this experience that they come from far back. I guess the same should be in Egypt or in Persia, in China. Israel. Those are civilizations that feel they talk as, 2,000 years before Christ was just yesterday, in a way. I'm not sure that makes you necessarily more aware of certain shades in history. I'm not sure about that. Sometimes, as a newcomer, you might have another insight in things. It's like, you visit a place. I've seen people who spend 2 years of their lives in a place, and they know far better about this place and the history than people who live there forever, and they take it for granted. It's the difference between, experience and taking something for granted and starting to learn from scratch. I can't tell you which works best.
Other questions? I have a question about time and thinking. Some people can think faster than others,
That's true.
naturally, and some by practice. But the name of the game, let's face it, thinking needs time. And some, let's call it meditation and quote unquote, just take time to let it sink in and think about it. This generation, and even us living in the digital age, the attention span is very small. And people want to have pills to just get me the bottom of it. How can we balance in this time and age between the demands on time and the need to think and take time?
I'm not sure. You see, that's a better question for you guys, professors, because we practitioners, diplomats, are actually very happy that we need minimum time to acquire information and react. But no, I can't tell you. I'm joking, but still. Yeah, if you're a practitioner, you have learned to move on a split second, because things might change even since you started talking on something. When you're a student or a professor or a thinker or intellectual, you know that everything needs time. To start with, nothing can happen without hard work. Even what I describe, if you want to be good, let's say good diplomat, and you want to be able to react in a second, adapt, come up with the smart thing to say or the right thing to say, or manage a bad thing that happened, it doesn't happen because you are, of course, it happens because you might be smart or well-trained, but it's the result of hard work. You need a good foundation in order to do all that. So good foundations, education, takes time, needs time. It's like good food. Why In Greece, we have also this, and I think it's the whole of South, we have to be fair, South of Europe, they have this wonderful tradition they used to have. Now it's, with time requirements, it's getting, it's fading away. This tradition with food, especially Greeks that came from Asia Minor. My grandmother was from there. So cooking was the central part of the day for women, and slow cooking, because they would put love and creativity in what they were doing, and pride in what they were doing. And it was an act of care and love for people. So like the good food, I mean, if you take now frozen, pre-cooked food, it doesn't taste good. Okay, it might fill your stomach, but it doesn't taste good. So the good stuff takes time. How can you convince or pass that to kids in this era where they play with smartphones and iPads far better than we do, and with all the machinery they're so exposed? I'm not sure I know. I'm not sure I know. And honestly, I don't know, maybe we change. Maybe also humankind changes. Progresses also change. We cannot really stop that, but I'm sure there will always be some groups of people who will be old-fashioned and they will continue the trick. Honestly, I wouldn't worry. I think that people who worry are, like the old cram people who say, my time, it was always better. We will manage with lots of information.
Yeah. Okay, I have another question, but after you.
You see, he saved me.
I have a question.
Sure.
I think it was very interesting that you talked about Greek culture and the politics of democracy rising out of the ancient Greeks, combining things that they found in other cultures and developing it themselves. And you mentioned in the 21st century the value of the individual, the innate value of the individual and his or her work is somewhat in competition with the value capitalism places on wealth. And I was wondering if you saw any innovative ways that Greeks have been perhaps taking advantage of recent economic woes to synthesize the value of the individual to the value of capitalist wealth.
I'll tell you this, and don't get me wrong, to start with, of course, I will repeat, ancient Greece was as well about wealth and power, and that's why actually they were spreading and they had the colonies to have more resources and wealth. So economy has always been part of the game, and I would be the last to say otherwise. But the thing is that the point I was trying to make is that sometimes, we tend to neglect that the value, like you said, the innate value of the individual is equal, if not important, because how else are you going to reach wealth and growth if not through individuals that have certain values and capacities? So now, to answer your question in a way, if I can, I would tell you that times of crisis in any society, and I think almost the whole globe now knows that, are a good time to reevaluate ways and practices. Because when something works, we are lazy. We don't go back and question if it's good or bad, where does that lead us. As long as everything, whether it's growth, there are jobs, there is money, it's fine. We can consume, it's fine, everything is fine. So once, you reach a level when you see that things might not be working that well under the current system. You saw that here a few years ago, and still there are issues. Europe now suffers of this. So other countries at some point, because we are so interconnected, we don't know how those things spread anymore. You can go back and question why I reached this point, what went wrong. I wouldn't open the debate what went wrong to the current crisis. I'm not an expert, it's a complicated thing, and it's still developing, so we can't say. What I can tell you is though this, after the first shock every society has to face a crisis, then they come to terms. It's like people when they're faced with bad news. You go to the doctor, they give you some bad news. First thing you're in denial, then you're angry, then you start facing it and you seek for ways to remedy what happened or to face it. So the same is societies in a way. So when they reach this stage where they come to terms with reality, and Europe is there now after this time, you start wondering what in my system or in my practices within the system, well, the system might be perfect. Your practice of the system might be fault. So they do that. They started doing that. You know, the intellectuals are back. So their speak is back as public speak. And the same happens here. You see people talking now about maybe we should do this or maybe we should doing that wrong. To me, that's a good sign. That brings dialogue back into society. Even a good practice, if you ask me, should be questioned. Because that means that you have a vivid society. The lowest point for a society is when the people move along without ever questioning why they do the things they do when they wake up in the morning.
Other questions? I have a quick question for you after her.
Thank you. You saved me from his question, but I don't think I will have a third chance.
I have a comment and a question. When I was doing a sabbatical at a printing company, they were doing a customer service tour for European customers. And they arranged this lovely tour in the Amish country and visited some antique stores and, had a nice outing for the people. And when they came back, they said, well, what did you think of the outing? And they said, well, these things you call antiques, we call those grandma's things. So I think that puts my earlier question a little bit in perspective and your comments. My question to you is, if I may ask, is how did you get interested in a career as a diplomat?
Probably this is the most difficult question. I can't really tell you. It's this thing. I know that there are people who wanted to be diplomats all their lives. We have these people, in the service. I meet these people in other services. I was not one of them. It's not like at the age of 10 I would say, I want to be a diplomat. No. I'll tell you, though, that my primary interest was not to be bored. So I can tell you this is a career you never get bored. And I have always been extrovert, so I wouldn't mind stepping into a room knowing nobody and introduce myself or be exposed to different mindsets and different cultures.
We saw that yesterday and today.
I know, but now I'm trained. I'm 20 years in the service, so it's a different thing. At the beginning, it can be really tough. So I would say this is one part, and the second part is, being a diplomat is, in a way, an act of representing on two ways. So you represent, of course, your country, and you promote your country's interests. That's your primary job. And at the same time, you build bridges with the countries you are each time posted in. So you try to understand the country you're in, and you try to transfer their message back home. And this role, in a way, of matching different countries and bringing understanding, I really found it interesting. I could be something else working with people. But, at some point, I said, this seems like, I was in international relations anyway, so I said, this might seem a really interesting job, and I have no regrets ever since.
Very good. Another question?
So it's your time.
Well,
didn't I tell you there is no
That's a
time?
quick question that
Sure.
you can say a good answer and so on. It's kind of trying to go back to the ancient Greeks,
Okay.
And to you today and to us. Information, knowledge, and truth. And wisdom are all elements towards our actions.
Correct.
So actions are the sign of life. If you don't take action, you are not really living. Even if you don't take action, it's an action itself.
I agree.
So
Denial of something, it is. It's the other side of the course. Yes.
So actions are the sign of life, which is the ultimate thing that we do as living people. or creatures. Now, how would you balance the information, knowledge, and wisdom that leads in a good balance to a good action?
Well, I
How
mean,
did they do it back then?
oh, back then it was easier. Information was limited. Come on. Now I mean, we have to consider information was much more limited in ancient Greece, and you had more time. Because time is not just, the 24 hours in the day, it's also the time you have to yourself. Because in order to think, you need some time to yourself. You need not to be overexposed or overconsumed. If you come to the decade we live in, how much private time anyone in this room has? With the cell phones, with the emails, with the text. You can be contacted at any moment of the day, regardless of the time zone you're in. So the private time has been minimized. And information has been magnified to a maximum because you are overexposed to information. So to start with, we have a big obstacle to overcome nowadays. How do you select amongst all this information what to keep and what to leave out? That minimizes the time you have to work on understanding, and at some point, if you're lucky enough to reach wisdom. So what I would say, I think the only defense is to have a good foundation and have a good education that might help you, because at least when you're younger, you have more time. You never realize, unfortunately, until you're too old to regain this time, because experience cannot be transferred. You have to live the experience. So when parents say, now that you have time, do that, you say, okay, I will have lots of time afterwards. Then you really don't have time. So what I would say is the only thing to lead, I guess, people through reading between the lines and understanding information, at least selecting the right information, or avoiding to select too much garbage, if I can put it that way, is to have a good mind. Good mind is like a good body. You have to train it to have it. It doesn't come without pain. I mean, if you want to excel in gymnastics, you have to work out from the age of 3 or 4, or the ballet. The same is with mind. You cannot revisit your mind at the age of 20 and say, now I'll be good. No, you have to build on it. You can be really smart, have a high IQ. If you don't train your mind, it will be dull. So I think this is the only thing. Just train your mind when you have time and when it's trainable.
Yes.
I have a very light question.
Good.
But
Those are the worst.
I think this will be easy. You've mentioned the movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Right.
And I know people in the room have seen it and loved it. When we saw this movie, it was as if it was a comedy, and we were just living with it. We were endeared to every character in the movie. I think I can speak for most people who've seen the movie. But what was the Greek people's reaction to that movie? Or was that just like watching something very calm? It was like, well, it was like last weekend at my house. Or was it exaggerated for us? Because, as we are inundated with television and silly programs now, in my estimation, in America with reality TV and all these things, just how serious was that movie taken, or was it seen as just, that was just a fun type of thing? And the other thing that is linked in my head is, for those of us who have to be tourists in Greece, because that's our only point of departure there, because we're not citizens and probably not going to be. So we love to visit that country, and if you can send us a couple of clues as to actual, this is a must, this is a must, this is a must, I would appreciate it. And if we have to turn the camera off, that would be fine, in case you have to leave out a particular region of the beautiful country that you represent. But to follow up the movie question, I just want, how silly do we look when we go, Opa, or
I
whatever
tell you.
that is?
Okay, that's kind of easy. To start with the second part, I would be glad to send you all tips and all materials you want, and even material, so that you can make up your mind. Because, I mean, my lenses maybe are not your lenses on that, but I can send you out and then you make up your mind. This is, I think, actually, this is my policy. I think people should make up their mind. I can give all the information I have available. I can tell you for this reason I would prefer on a personal basis to go there and there, and then you make up your mind. So that was the easy part. Now, as far as the movie is concerned, I think that I saw it as well, and I enjoyed it very, very, very much. So what I tell you is my personal take and discussions I had with friends. So it's not like a general expert statement on that. But I think also the Greek audience really loved it and enjoyed it. So the way, if you're now talking about the way people approach it, there's a difference between the Greek audience living in Greece and the Greek American audience living in the US or in Canada and Australia. Those are really related in a way. I'll tell you, for the Greeks, this was like what was happening in the families a few years ago, a few decades ago. I mean, my aunts would do that. You know, my aunts, they are like late 70s now. So they would do that when they were young. That was the family thing. For the Greek American community, yeah, this is the thing. This is the thing, and they enjoy. And that, there is an explanation to that. Because when you leave your country and you immigrate, the image you keep is the image you had when you're living there. They go, they visit, but it's a different thing if you go for a month to see your relatives and your friends, and in a way be a little tourist. It's a mixed thing. You're a little tourist, you're a little bit in your own home. But the vivid images you have, or what passes through your parents or grandparents, because in some cases we have now second, third, fourth generation of people, it's the image they had when they were living there. So you have a nice mixture of things happening today, but also customs that used to be a little bit in the Greek family. What's a constant is the openness and the food. You cannot but eat the food.
Well, we'll try point, counterpoint. Stick with the food. I think that's a very important aspect of this whole thing.
It is.
That wonderful movie.
It was.
But as we've talked briefly just before the meeting today, I've got a paper in progress on Greece. I didn't begin it just because I knew you were coming, but I've been playing around with it for a couple of years. And as I indicated, I had a little trouble when I was in Athens, and 2 years ago I had a meeting scheduled with our American embassy, and they were closed because of a bombing at one of the other embassies. So I wasn't able to see the people. We could interact and send some messages from the ship. I had a meeting with your people in your employment and social security ministry. That was canceled because snap elections had been called and everybody felt they needed to go out and campaign so that they could have a job the following Monday. And that worked. So I have some information, but missing some. In a country with 24% unemployment, 27% among the young people, and 40-some% of people working in governmental agencies at all levels of government, why we have a surely major problem that you're aware of every day, I'm sure, when you don't see that wonderful movie. And so the question is, what are your thoughts about potential future directions as Greece tries to work itself through a really serious economic downturn? In this country, a number of people have said, well, we don't want to be Greece in 5 or 10 years. And so we're all watching what you folks do and hoping that you will find a way through your economic problems and troubles and give us some leadership. And then we can all say, well, we want to be just like Greece as you work through this. I know that's a broad question, but we've talked about it briefly for a couple days.
Yeah, it's a broad question. Let me see. Well, in a way, part of it I told you last evening. I would like to repeat myself again. So what we can say to start with, there can always be statements in the domestic politics picking on countries. Sometimes they can be, let's say, not the best that can be stated. I don't comment on those. And I think that this symposium and all these days you're going to have, you will think that you would want to be like Greece. Trust me. Don't get ever the snapshot. Get the global picture, because this is more important. And going now to economic problems, I'll tell you this. Economy is an issue for many, many, many countries. And for some, it's more acute at this point, and for some is to be treated, otherwise it will become acute. There are several ways to tackle this. As far as Greece is concerned, there is a method, there is a way, and there is a European Union consensus in how to treat that, and it's completely intertwined with what is happening in Spain, in Portugal, in Ireland, and in Italy, because we are in a zone of common currency and in a union. So the reaction differs from the reaction a country that has its own currency and can take its own decisions on a fiscal level is. Like I said, it's the twofold thing. It's of course the budget cuts, and that means that people have to make sacrifices, big sacrifices, to reduce the deficit. I was watching the debate yesterday. I saw that deficit was a big question mark. How do you everything? Investing, not increasing the deficit, not borrowing money. This is the big question for Western democracies at this point. And at some level we might open the debate how we reach this point, all of us, but this is not for now. So what I was saying is this: we have worked the 3 years. People have worked, because that's people's actually sacrifices. Greek people's sacrifices worked through reducing the budget deficit, and that's been done. The primary budget deficit is almost eliminated, and now it's the turn of structural reforms that have already been made and continue to be made to regenerate the economy. You want me to tell you that the total outlook? That's the $1 million question for European Union. If you ask Mrs. Merkel, she wouldn't know at this point. But what I know is that the people in Greece have made great sacrifices, and they are not quitters. And we have weathered much, much worse crises in our history. And it's a little bit, I understand why people are so focused on the economic crisis. People always need to be focused on specific examples. But I would say never lose the global picture.
Thank you.
Well, I think time is running because she needs to be back to Chicago. But let me tell you a piece of information that I'm not telling a secret. This symposium that started yesterday is documented here. It will end on November 7, but that's not the whole truth. The whole truth
There
is
is more to it.
There is more truth to it. Yes, the sessions will end by 7th with a grand finale and music and Olympics and so forth. But I'm working on a study abroad course in Greece for the year 2015. And it's entitled The 21st Century Ancient Greece. That's the main study of it. And the Consul General was kind enough, when I just briefly mentioned this to her yesterday, she said, I'll be supportive to you, I'll help you in any way I can. And now we have a friend and insider that will make this one of the best study abroad courses that EIU had ever had. We are lucky that Eastern has this element in its mission and vision, the international element. Look at the faculty, look at the students, look at the president. President Perry and his schedule found time to come here today and yesterday. And he is big supportive, as I know, for international activities and curriculum. So we thank you very much for that. And stay tuned for study abroad course, 21st Century Ancient Greece. Any other final words other than bye-bye to our guest speaker?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.